1530 swimmer, this video is coming out just for you. You were asking me about putting together a video for the 987 prices, and here we go. So once again, I think you've seen some of my other videos, so I'll kind of keep the intro a bit brief. You've got all the numbers over here broken down by the model, the country and the type, and I've started to plot that graphically over here so we can start getting some insight from this. So if we start with the cheapest 987 you can get, that's got to be the base 987 Gen 1. Whether it's a manual or an automatic doesn't quite make a huge difference on the price. You'll actually find that in the UK, the manual 987 base is coming in cheaper with an average price of just under £14,000. It's $18,000. And if you were to opt for the automatic, it's just a bit more, £14,500. So in the UK, that is the cheapest way to get yourself into a Cayman. Go get a manual 987 Gen 1 base model. And for the US, if we look at the US price data, let's have a look, 15,000. There's not a lot in it, but the automatic version is actually going to be cheaper for the 987 Gen 1 base. That's $20,000, $327 versus $21,000. So yeah, it's just the other way around. In the UK, the manual 987 Gen 1 base will be cheaper. In the US, you want to basically get into the PDK version of that car. Now, as you can see, as you move through the generations and you go up from the base to the sport, the prices go up. So if we look at a 987 Gen 2 base, that's £24,000 in the UK. Well, call it £25,000 really. And comparing that like for like to the 987 Gen 1 base, that is 40. So it's about £10,000 more. It's quite a lot of money to go from the 981 to the 982. Obviously, you've got the different engine in there, a bit more power output, but you've pretty much got the same chassis and the handling. So for the for value for money, you probably can't go wrong with a 987 Gen 1, to be fair. And then over here, you've basically got the average odometer readings for all the cars. Now, to be expected, the older cars going back to 2006, they're going to have the higher odometer readings on. In fact, we've got the 2005, that's the oldest version, that's the oldest year this data goes back to for these cars. As you can see, you'll basically get more mileage on them as the years go on. Which cars get driven the least? Well, you know, there's not something really sticking out here. You could say that we've got some base 2009 cars that haven't been driven too many miles. Average number of miles at 40,000, which is not bad. I bought my car with 40,000 miles on. Cayman R's not getting driven too much. 2012, that's coming in at just under 20,000 miles. If we take a similar 3.4 Sport, you've got 30,000 miles on there. So a rough conclusion you can make is that the Cayman R owners tend to put fewer miles onto their cars. Now this is the next graph is the one that I guess would be the really interesting one. This is the depreciation curves. Now I put this large, drill down into this as much as you can on screen, and this time round I've broken it down between Gen 1 and the Gen 2. There was no need to do that with the 981s or the 718s, but this is a very interesting kind of graph here. Now I'll kind of talk you through this bit by bit. Let's look at basically the 987 Gen 1 base, and we'll look at the 987 Gen 1 Sport. So if we look at the orange and the blue, what was interesting about these curves is you can see this is the Sport, this is the base. They kind of converge at about 82,000 miles. So what we're saying is, if you've got a 987 Gen 1, it doesn't matter if it's the base or the Sport. Once you've put enough miles on it, they're going to be equal value on the used market. It makes no difference whether it's a base or a Sport. As the mileage decreases, you can see the Sport model is going to be there for more money. So if I look at this orange point over here, you see I've got a 981 Sport with an average price of £18,500, and the nearest kind of blue point I've got, which is a 987 Gen 1 base, that's coming in at £16,000. Now if you're going to be buying a Gen 1 Sport, it's probably worth getting that car with about less than 50,000 miles if you can, because if you're going to pack on about another 20,000 miles, you're going to be bringing down that value. If you're going to be doing a lot of miles on your car, and then I guess you don't care too much about base or Sport, stick with the base, because you're going to lose less money on the base. You will lose less money on a 987 Gen 1 base as you put on the miles. Now, if we look over here between, we've got the yellow and the red curve. The yellow is the 987 Gen 2 Sport, and the red one is the 987 Gen 2 base. If you look at the trends of these two curves, they're very level running over here, and the point of divergence is about over there. So what we're saying over here is the yellow one. The 987 Gen 2 Sport will hold its money over the 987 Gen 2 base all the time, irrespective of mileage. Your Gen 2 Sport will be worth more than the Gen 2 base. And that's interesting, because over here on the 987 we saw on the 987 Gen 1 we saw the points converge. That definitely does not happen over here. So if you're going to get a 987 Gen 2 Sport, that's definitely going to be worth the money no matter how many miles you pack onto that car. And the point at which they kind of cross over, it's about 14,000 miles. So if the car is really low mileage, according to this data, well, you know, this is probably more of a bit of a mathematical anomaly, because if the mileage was the same, I would still pay more for the 987 Gen 2 Sport than the base. And maybe this is where options comes into it, which is not obviously shown on this data. Now, if we're going to look at the downward trend of this curve, which curve has got the biggest downward trend? Well, it's got to be the orange one here, and that's the 987 Gen 1 Sport. Which has got the flattest curve? Well, it's kind of vaguely upward trending, but that's probably due to a lack of data. It's this light blue one over here. It's a 987 Gen 2 Black Edition. Trouble is, there is only 1 point on our graph for this, which is over here. Yeah, it's interesting to see the R model, but as you can see, it will drop down, and eventually it's going to converge with the 987 Gen 2 Sport. So personally, in my opinion, I think the R's are pretty overpriced for what they are, but you know, there's very few of them on the market, so that's kind of why they hold their value. If we look at this point over here, what have we got? We've got, yeah, here you go, you can see here, £28,000, which is not too bad for an R. I think the ones that we sought after be the manuals, and you can basically see, yeah, £50,000 for a manual R there. I'm going to try and keep this video short. I said it would be short. I've probably overrun a bit. I hope you enjoy the video. The quick conclusions to run: if you're going to get a sport model, if you can afford the money, get the 987 Gen 2 Sport, because it's got a much flatter depreciation curve. The 987 1 Sport is basically going to drop into base price territory if you do buy that and put the mileage on. Yeah, according to this, 987 Gen 2 base or sport, that's probably the one that I'd recommend on this. See you later. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Bye.